The post is titled, "How do I fix things with my husband? Hi, I recently posted my story somewhere else, but I was directed here because some people said that I might get some better help here. Feel free to read the whole story in my other post, but basically I cheated on my husband 3 years ago, and I'm trying to figure out how to get things back to normal. He used to be very affectionate and loving, but now he isn't at all. He doesn't even get upset with me. He's just completely ambivalent about everything. Like, he doesn't even care. I just want to know how to make our relationship go back to what it was like before. I don't want to get divorced, and it sounds like he doesn't either. What do I do?" Edit, I wanted to put this update here, but it's nothing super major. I wanted to thank everyone who's commented and sent me messages, both ones that were kind and the ones that were more harsh. Some of them were still extremely vulgar, but most were fairly reasonable. I've been directed to a lot of resources that will definitely be very helpful for me. Thank you so much for that. A lot of people have made the same arguments that he's only still here for 2 reasons, which are money and custody. I don't think that's the case, and I'll tell you why. For one thing, we have a prenup in place. My family is very wealthy, and my dad demanded we get a prenup before we got married. So I really don't think money is what's keeping him in this marriage. I also don't think he's staying for our daughter, although he definitely loves her to an extreme degree, and she's definitely the most important thing in the world to him. I firmly believe this. My husband never really had interest in having kids. When we discussed kids, he told me he was ambivalent to the idea. He'd have kids if I wanted them, pretty much. I've always wanted at least 2, but preferably 3, so that's how our daughter was born. Anyway, I talked to him and he agreed to go to individual therapy for himself. He was pretty hesitant about it, but after I told him that this wasn't something he needed to do for me, for us, or even for himself, but rather something he had to do for our daughter, he agreed. I think this should really help him figure things out. I'm a bit concerned that therapy might push him to want to get divorced, but honestly, if that's what happens, then I'll accept it. I just want to make him happy. At this point, even if my marriage doesn't survive, I'll be okay as long as we do what's best for him and our daughter. They are my #1 concern now. User Confidus Charmed said, "After everything, he really thinks I'd go behind his back like that? Yes, because you have done so before. What you said is the biggest indictment. It reveals how sadly unaware you are and have possibly never truly taken responsibility for the infidelity and the damage you did to him. He is showing you exactly where he is at. He's indifferent. Whatever love he had for you is dead from the infidelity and subsequent actions that continue to prove to him what he now knows with certainty: she doesn't love me, so he is choosing to stay for the well-being of the one person he is pretty sure does love him, his kid." User, very upset and bitter, said, "Oh, I'm just going to add a few quotes I want to address, if that's fine to do on this sub since you encouraged us to look at it. So he's gone gray rock on you and he's checked out of the relationship. He's just there for your guys' daughter, to raise her together. With gray rocking, he's only giving you the barest of attention to make it through the day. You confronted him to change his behavior a year in. That's hardly your decision to make. Unfortunately, he is forcing himself to have and be in this relationship. Referring to my previous point, he is checked out. I'm also slightly concerned you're forcing him to have sex with you when he has no interest in doing so. Yes, he'd think that because that's exactly what you did. How can he trust you?" He brings up a very valid point, and you're harming your relationship for something that you did to it. Turn that anger elsewhere besides him. You were the one who did this, not him. I'm going to dive a little bit into and be honest about what I read, and it's not meant to be an attack on you. Your title shouldn't be, "How do I fix my husband?" It should be, "How do I fix me?" You have not been reconciling. You've pulled a Trade Federation forced agreement on the people of Naboo. This is not reconciliation. It's in the guise of it, but this really shouldn't be considered it. You've forced reconciliation on your terms, not his. You're operating with only your interest in mind, not his. Reconciliation is a two-way pact, and this is not it. You are forcing him into this, not encouraging, not soothing him into it. You are trying to achieve this by force. This will fail. All I hear when I read this is, why did he go on long trips? Why doesn't he pay enough attention? Why doesn't he get over the affair? Why doesn't he love me? What's wrong with him? Why doesn't he want to make love to me? Why doesn't he trust me? Turn that analytical eye on yourself and do some deep digging into the why of you. Stop thinking of what he's doing and not doing and really figure out what you've done. I don't think you actually understand just how hurtful of a thing you've done to him. You're brushing it off, it seems. Either that or there is a complete lack of empathy on your part. The issue is not with him, it is you. You confided to the AP. You decided to have an affair. You decided to rush reconciliation. You are convincing him to have sex with you when he doesn't want to. You are going out and expecting him to trust you when he has every reason to distrust you. It is you. There is no fixing this relationship until you fix whatever the hell is going on in you and why you are pinning this on your husband. Figure that out first. User DRedditAvenger said, so I was one of the users who sent you here. Basically, what I said in my first post on that thread stands, but I will expand about it here. He is not going to go back to the way he was. That's impossible. Not trying to be harsh here, but it's like getting shot and then expecting not to be changed by that. Or more like you shooting the person and expecting your relationship to return to what it was before that. It isn't possible. This may very well be your normal with him now. What's happened since your fight? I think one of the things you can do is accept what I just wrote and stop trying to make this go away or be something you got over, but instead learn to live with the reality you have. Accept it. It's clear he doesn't trust you. He isn't in a place where he is willing to be emotionally vulnerable with you. Basically, he will live with you and cordially interact with you, but that's really it. Probably because his motivation is to be with his kid now. Are you prepared to stay like this? It may never change. If it does, then you will have to earn his trust again, and maybe he will fall in love with you again. I suspect last time he pursued you. Now you will have to pursue him. But he may not, and it's obviously going to take a long time. Start with that reality. Live in that reality and quit trying to make him be what he won't ever be again. The man who just innocently loved you is gone. Those are your consequences, and honestly, you deserve them. They are also consequences for him too. I am sure he doesn't want to live like this, but he probably sees it as a means to an end to see his daughter. This isn't a man who is getting even with you. It's a man who is still suffering. This is why posting about how hard it is for you just proves you don't really get it. The general tone of your post doesn't seem from the place of, my husband is suffering and it kills me, but mostly, I am unhappy and I need him to get better so I can be happy again. It's mostly, how can I get what I want when I want it, which is now. Which is also the attitude that led to your affair. From your post, you say you met when you were 20 and 21 respectively. Let me ask, were you each other's first and only until your affair? Since your affair partner was a woman, did you know you were into women? Did he know? The thing with that is, the affair also changes your sexuality in a sense that this is something new that has been introduced into you and your husband's sexual history now. I am sure that complicates things for him. He may be asking if you are really into him in the first place, or if you were just unsure when you first met him and settled as to avoid social pressure. Maybe you're gay and he was your beard. I am sure he is also asking, how did you allow yourself to cheat? What are your thoughts on love and loyalty? What is it in you that allowed this to happen? Everything I wrote here are all things you will have to deal with and address. Doing so will make you a safer choice for him, though ultimately that choice is up to him. When your kid is older, he may decide to move on. You don't have to stay, but you have to honor his choice, whatever that may be. OP's first update is titled, Does Anyone Feel Resentment Towards Their AP? This is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. From the start, I'd like to say that I understand that the results of our actions fall on us as WPs. It was our responsibility to protect the marriage and keep the promises we made. However, that being said, I can't help but feel extreme resentment towards my AP anyway, and I just wonder if anyone else feels this way. I understand that it's not AP's fault, but if someone knows someone else is married, then I just think they shouldn't actively pursue that person. Once again, I'm not blaming her for any of my actions. I just feel this resentment anyway, and I want to know if anyone else feels this way. User Glum Requirement 240 said, question, did you do things with your OM that you didn't do with your husband, that you would never do with your husband? I have been the OM more times than I can count. No, I'm not proud of this. And in all my cases, I was never the pursuer. I was always the pursued. They always wanted to do and did things they would never do with their husbands. They lusted for me, which is way more powerful than love. Like the OP's husband, I was a consultant. I traveled the country. I'd walk in my suit, tie, watch, shoes, belt, dressed to the nines, and on my first day, they were dressed in regular clothes, plain Jane-like. The next day, they would come in a short dress, heels, makeup, hair, all of it done, and I knew what was up. They would flirt heavily, and they usually ended up in an elevator when they hit the stop button and pushed me against the wall, then to my hotel room at lunch and room key exchanged. My point is that you two are trying to make yourselves out to be the victims when you're not. Your husbands are. I left at the end of my contract while they tried to figure out how to extend it, but I no longer wanted to be there and left the pieces of them and their husbands and their families behind me. I'm a bad guy, I always have been. If I get your attention, I know what to say, I know how to touch, but in the end, it's all just a game, but you wanted to play. Under this comment, OP said the following: I was looking through my notifications when I noticed this gem and I just knew I had to reply. There's honestly a lot to say about this comment, but the fact that you're talking to me the way you are speaks volumes. I'm really glad you can recognize that you're a bad guy, but it's really quite pitiful that you're incapable of changing yourself for the better despite that knowledge. But the way you describe yourself and your actions with such pride is extremely concerning to me. But hey, I'll bite. I never did anything with my OM that I hadn't done with my husband because there was no OM. If you phrase the question appropriately, then the answer would obviously be yes, since my AP was a woman and therefore there are things that I did with her that are necessarily impossible to do with my husband. I have a hard time believing anything you're saying is true, honestly. You're telling me that you didn't do anything except walk in wearing nice clothes, and the very next day, all of these women were dressing provocatively, flirting, and then being so aggressive that they stopped the elevator halfway up just so they could have sex with you. And you really expect me to believe that you're talking about this in a way where not only did this happen, but it happened more than once? That it in fact happened so many times that you're describing it as some sort of trend, and that these women were willing to do things that they'd never done before, like threesomes and various other sexual acts. You actually typed out that entire comment thinking that sounded plausible in any way, but hey, let's pretend that that really was the life you lived. Who am I to say what really happened and what didn't? I mean, I can, since you write the women in your story like characters in porn. You described the lust they had for you as more powerful than love. Maybe that was true in their case. Generally, I would say that lust is, in fact, not more powerful than love. Lust is not something you can build a lasting relationship on. Even still, in that case, I hate to break it to you, but you weren't special. The women didn't cheat on their husbands because they wanted to have sex with you. It was the other way around. They had sex with you because they wanted to cheat on their husbands. You walked away from that thinking you'd use them, but in truth, they were the ones that used you. I really don't think you should be as proud of this as you are, but keep going if it makes you feel better. No harm in lampooning yourself on the internet, I suppose. The next update is titled, "He said he doesn't love me anymore. My husband was away for work for the past week. I was pretty sad that we would miss Valentine's Day with one another, but I've also been trying to be better about giving him more space as he needs it. It was especially hard because he was in Arizona for the Super Bowl over the weekend, apparently invited by one of his clients, so it's been a week since I've seen him. Ever since the pandemic, he's almost never gone for more than a week at a time. So having him not home for so long really made me ache. Because of that, I've sort of been spiraling all week. I've been feeling extremely helpless and hopeless, and my posts here haven't really done much. He has said that he's already looked into starting therapy, so at least he's doing that. But still, I was just missing him so much. He doesn't call me at night anymore. He barely even calls me at all when he's away for work, except to say goodnight to our daughter. I've been reading and rereading a lot of the comments I've gotten on my previous posts, and they've really started weighing me down. He came home today and I couldn't help myself. I convinced him to eat the dinner I made for him, and then I just asked him, "Do you still love me?" I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was just some sort of masochistic instinct that I had within me. It's not like I would have believed him if he said yes anyway. He just stared at me for a long time before sighing and shaking his head and replying no. Well, he really said, "I don't think so, probably not." But that's even worse than a no because that means he hasn't even really put any thought into it. That was exactly what I didn't want to hear, but it was sort of the answer I was expecting. I was already crying by that point, so I asked him if he ever loved me. He frowned and waited even longer before answering. Honestly, this part is sort of a blur, and I was already feeling like I was going to faint, so I honestly barely heard what he said. But I'm pretty sure he said something along the lines of him not knowing if he ever loved me, because he couldn't imagine just falling out of love with me the way that he did if he ever was truly in love with me to begin with. I just sat on the couch crying and I couldn't say anything else. He left and went to bed and said he was tired from traveling. Now I'm sitting here and typing this out, feeling worse than I've ever felt before, but also sort of determined. We're supposed to do our Valentine's Day date on Saturday since we missed the actual date. We have someone to take care of our daughter and we were going to spend the whole day together. I had a special surprise planned for him as well. I wanted to make him feel truly special. I wanted to make him remember how much I really did love him. I was going to make our day unforgettable. Now I'm going to make it unforgettable for a different reason. I won't keep him in this relationship trapped with someone he doesn't love. He doesn't love me anymore, and even if I still love him more than anything, sometimes that's just not enough. If I really loved him, then I wouldn't trap him. I'd be willing to make the sacrifice so that he could be happy with someone who truly deserves him in the future. But that does mean this is probably going to be the last day I ever get to have with him. I'm going to cherish every moment I get to share with him. I'm going to make sure I never forget that day. It's so funny how much you can appreciate something when you put an expiration date on it. I know I said I didn't want a divorce, but I guess I'm getting one anyway. User, very upset and bitter, said, "I'll be honest, I'm not sure if you've learned anything from posting here. My comments on your previous post turned out to be spot on. You don't seem to understand that you keep pressuring him to reconcile and make himself available to you. You keep discarding his wants and desires and only operate in your best interests. This is evidenced by your willingness to now take away any agency he has left and choose to drop the divorce bomb on a date that is supposed to be a makeup for Valentine's Day. Like what? I think you're very interested in the comfort and security of relationships, but you are not at all interested in the work of maintaining one. In the same light as your family, you're going to break it up because you know it's going to be work. I think you know that you're going to have to put forth your best effort to have a chance, but it scares you and makes you uncomfortable. Reconciliation could work and be productive if you would put away your ego and unquenchable need for affirmation that led to your affair in the first place, and now affects your reconciliation efforts. A part of me also sees you finding excuses to finally end it, to be freed from the stress of trying now, which I think this was one. Do you think part of why he feels this way is because of how you've handled this recovery so far? The more I read into this, I have to wonder at what point he gave up, if it was right after D-Day or after your demands to get over the affair. Either way, I wish you the best. If you're going to take this step, I'd recommend a different date, maybe after that makeup date you have planned. I just think it's in very poor taste to drop a bomb like that during an event that's supposed to be an instance of bonding. It's your choice though, for better or for worse. User, well, that's tough, said, "She keeps trying to view the reconciliation only through her perspective and what she believes her husband's perspective is. In her mind, she thinks that the thing that her husband would want most is a divorce, and he might want that. But she is coming to this conclusion without asking him. I do agree that she should wait till after their date, just because you never know what could happen. Maybe he tells her he wants a divorce, or maybe he says that he is going to give R a real go. No one has any idea. She should really communicate her own feelings while also being more receptive to how he is dealing with everything as well. The real question for OP is, are you asking your husband for a divorce because you truly believe that is what he wants? Or are you asking your husband for a divorce because you are unwilling to deal with the shame of your actions and you don't want to do your best in helping him heal because it is too hard? OP, be patient before you take a decision like this. The final update was made a year ago and is titled, "I'm Not Giving Up." Last time I posted, I was in a really bad place. A lot of you, rightfully so, told me that I shouldn't be unilaterally making the decision to end my marriage, and I absolutely agree. It was difficult to reach that place, but there were a few things that helped. For one, our Valentine's Day date was incredible. I wasn't lying when I planned the day to be all about him. We did his favorite things, ate his favorite food, and I actually got to see him laughing and smiling and having a good time for once. I see him that way with other people and especially with our daughter, but if he's just with me, he's completely stoic. Seeing him be so genuinely happy for the first time in so long reminded me how much I loved him and how much I couldn't bear being away from him. Therapy has also really helped me come to terms with things. I switched to a different therapist and she's been a bit harsher on me, but I think I needed that. She's made a point to really make me confront things about myself that I was unable to before, but she also did a really good job in helping me understand that the desperation I'm feeling is perfectly reasonable. She's been really great so far, and I think I'm already making some pretty great strides, although there's still a lot of room for improvement. One thing she helped me realize was how I felt about the affair. Sure, I knew I'd done something wrong, but I wasn't able to understand how wrong it really was. Part of me truly believed that it wasn't that bad since it was with another woman instead of a man. I think that's probably because my husband and I had discussed having a threesome with another woman before, but I ended up not wanting to go through with it because the thought of seeing him with another woman made me nauseous. I recognize now that it was a betrayal and a deception either way. The threesome would have been okay because he would have had the ability to consent and he could stop at any time. But I took that away from him by doing it behind his back. I also recognized that in the case of a threesome, it would have been just sex, but with my affair partner, there was an emotional component as well. While I was never in love with her, I was friends with her and I did genuinely care about her. On top of that, I recognized how it might have been even worse that it was with a woman. I can honestly say that I've never been attracted to a man besides my husband, to the point where I've even told him before that I'd consider myself a lesbian if it wasn't for him. At the time, this seemed like something harmless, but I now realize that my husband likely had thoughts about whether or not I'd be happier with a woman, and my affair just affirmed that for him. He's always struggled with his self-esteem, always thinking that he wasn't good enough for me or that I was out of his league. He was bullied a lot as a kid for being chubby and as an Asian immigrant growing up in a mostly white town, and I know it left some lasting scars. After the date, unfortunately, things were back to the tense situation that they always were, but a few things did happen that rejuvenated my hope that we could make things work. For one, I do believe he's still attracted to me, even though I have stopped pressuring him to have sex with me, since many of you appropriately told me that I was practically assaulting him. It makes me feel absolutely disgusted with myself that I could ever do something so awful to the person I love, even more awful than the cheating in my opinion. However, I've noticed some things that made me pretty sure he is still attracted to me, and I caught him doing something that made me almost certain of it. I don't know whether he still loves me or not, but at least he's still attracted to me, and I can make things work with at least that. He has been going to therapy as well, and I hope he'll be able to deal with his self-esteem and self-worth issues through it. I recognize that this might push him towards wanting to get a divorce anyway, but honestly, that's okay. I'm going to leave that up to him. If therapy helps him realize that he can't stay anymore, then I'll be happy to do whatever he needs me to do. I really just want what's best for him, whether that's with me or not, but I realize that I have no right to make that decision for him. Until then, I'm working hard to reaffirm my desire to be with him and to show him how much I love him. A deleted user said, something to keep in mind, before the cheating, he probably felt special and extraordinary. After all, you were primarily attracted to women and he was so special that you chose him exclusively. He is probably reflecting on himself very differently now. I know you know him best and probably already took this into consideration. Your choices as of late are awesome. This post is so encouraging. I sometimes dislike the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but it kind of has its place here. Under this comment, OP said, I think he is as well, although I haven't talked to him about it yet. I'm giving him the time to work through his issues on his own. And once he's been in therapy for a bit, I'm going to let him know that he can talk to me about his feelings as well. He's always been sort of guarded with his feelings because of his upbringing, but I was always the exception to that rule until now. I've already told myself that I can't pressure him to share with me, which is going to be hard, but I think I can do it. I'm just going to leave the door open for him and let him come to me if and when he's ready. He is special and extraordinary. He's probably one of the smartest people I've ever known. When he talks, it's incredible. He just knows so much about so many things. Even when I don't understand anything, I could just stare and watch him talk for hours. I also think he's incredibly attractive, even if he doesn't think so, and he's got such a good heart. I want to convince him again that this is how I see him, and I want him to see himself the way that I do. I'm not exactly sure how to do that yet, but I do hope I'll get there eventually.